My legitimate younger sister has set her sights on my fiancé. She gave him a sachet, admired the moon with him, and even had illicit relations without a matchmaker, luring my fiancé to come and break off our engagement. While I was ridiculed throughout the city, my sister shamelessly awaited her wedding. Destiny is in one's own hands. I'm pursuing my happiness and freedom. What is wrong with that? What is there to discuss with an ancient person like you whose mind is full of legitimate versus concubine-born nonsense? She married in grand style, while I was carried in a bridal sedan to a humble little courtyard at the end of the alley. 10 years later, upon hearing I had become a first-ranked lady of imperial mandate, my legitimate sister escaped home in a mad state, repeatedly claiming I had harmed her and prevented her from marrying the poor, despised top scholar. My legitimate sister was unwilling to attend the spring exploration banquet. She feigned illness and had her maid dress me up to look like her to attend the banquet in her place. The spring exploration banquet will be full of talented scholars and beautiful ladies. Elder sister, you are wise and graceful. Make sure to show off splendidly. But don't let the veil fall and let people know you're just a concubine-born daughter of the Prime Minister's residence. My face pale, I nodded. I knew she was unwilling to attend the spring exploration banquet only because the banquet would have this year's newly appointed top scholar, Lu Qing-shan. He was the fine husband father had painstakingly selected for her from many candidates. But my legitimate sister was dissatisfied and threw a tantrum. That day, she smashed countless treasures in the mansion. Although father was angry, he still tried to persuade her with kind words. I know you look down on him for his humble origins, but this person is no ordinary man. Your father was once a commoner too. Yet aren't I now sitting in the position of Prime Minister? My legitimate younger sister muttered. So poor people can't even be talked about now. Afterwards, she rebelliously climbed over the wall of the Prime Minister's residence and ran away from home. That night, father was consumed with rage. While I knelt at the side, struck by the inkstone he had thrown, I didn't make a sound. Father looked down at my face and suddenly asked with great mercy, "Do you have something to say?" I came to bid father farewell. I recalled the husband mother had selected for me a few days ago. Mother said to marry me off to the Wang family, the cloth merchants in the West Alley, as a second wife. Father nodded absent-mindedly. After all, I was only a concubine-born daughter. Daughter has heard that the eldest son of the Wang family has lost 3 wives, all beaten to death by young Master Wang. I bit my teeth. Daughter is somewhat afraid. Your mother is meticulous in her affairs. She certainly wouldn't overlook such a flaw. Father's face showed impatience. This matter must be a rumor. Just wait peacefully for your wedding. He lifted his foot to leave. I hastily knelt before him, causing his gaze to fall upon an old plain silver hairpin atop my hair. That was from 20 years ago when he was destitute and impoverished, a token of love he gave to a hunter's daughter on his way to the capital for the imperial examination. It was also the relic my mother left behind. Father's face already showed a hint of guilt. Seizing upon this trace of guilt, I said urgently, "Mother was able to find a dragon among men like you despite being a hunter's daughter back then. I'm no worse than her, and I refuse to marry the Wang family's eldest young master." His unfathomable gaze lingered on me. But in the end, he didn't expose my little trick. He pulled out that silver hairpin and snapped it in half with one forceful grip. Father rubbed the broken half of the hairpin and sighed. What a pity Yun Yang is no longer here. If she saw how clever you've grown, she would surely be delighted. From now on, don't mention her in front of me anymore. If you don't wish to marry young Master Wang, there is no rush with the engagement. I'll discuss it with your mother. Spend more time with Zishu and let her learn from your temperament. With that, the 2 halves of the silver hairpin were tossed to the ground with a clear clang, and father left after dropping that remark. As I picked up the broken silver hairpin, I remembered this was mother's favorite hairpin when she was alive. I felt somewhat regretful for rashly wearing it today. But if I hadn't been pushed to a dead end, I wouldn't have touched mother's belongings. A few days ago, the main wife used me as a favor. She intended to betroth me to the Wang family's eldest young master as his second wife, only because Fang Zishu was about to come of age and get engaged. If she didn't marry me off, her precious daughter wouldn't be able to discuss marriage prospects properly. The main wife only cares about Fang's issue. But they never thought about me. That the eldest son of the Wang family is cruel and vicious, with a history of beating someone to death in the street. Prime Minister Fang was indeed right. I'm truly not like my mother. I can't be weak and compromising in everything, and I can't become Fang's issue either. No matter how outrageous her actions, she is constantly praised for her true temperament because of her beautiful face. After Luo Zishu ran away from home, she panicked and hid in my room, clutching my hand. Sister, you must help me. I kept my head down doing embroidery, responding with silence. These past few days she has been living carefree, sneaking into Luo Yang's largest pleasure house, determined to find her ideal husband among those high-ranking officials and nobles. Since childhood, she has been used to being unrestrained, looking down on propriety the most. Everyone says the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter has a true temperament and an interesting personality. I only find it laughable. If I hadn't been by her side, covering up her stupidity, taking punishments for her, and lying for her, Fang Zishu would have done countless foolish and disgraceful things, and the title of Luo's famous daughter would naturally never have fallen to her. Back then, my mother travelled 1,000 miles to find my father, only to discover he had already remarried. To let me acknowledge my ancestors and return to the clan, she crashed her head against the stone pillar in front of the Prime Minister's residence. Before dying, she wiped my tear-stained eyes and said, "Ah, Hui, don't cry. Mother's death is no great loss. From now on, Mother will make you the young lady of the Prime Minister's residence." But in the end, I never became the young lady, and instead became the illegitimate child born before marriage from the Prime Minister's own mouth. Scorned by thousands, all directed at me alone. The Prime Minister's wife was fiercely jealous and couldn't bear my existence. To survive, I could only desperately try to please Fang Zishu, because I still had some usefulness left. Even though I was a thorn piercing straight into the heart of the Prime Minister's residence as lady, I still lived and grew up, seeing that I ignored her. Fang Zishu panicked. She grabbed the scissors and cut the handkerchief I was embroidering into shreds. I suddenly raised my head. I couldn't hide the mockery in my eyes. "Little sister, how is it that the top scholar isn't good enough for you? Has it driven you to seek your husband at a brothel?" On the day the results were announced, Prime Minister Fang selected a son-in-law at the announcement board. The whole city knew that Lu Qingshan was already a prize in the bag for the future Prime Minister's residence. When Fang Zishu heard about this, she threw a huge tantrum. Even on the day when the top scholar paraded through the streets and the whole city turned out to watch, she stayed behind closed doors and overfed all the fish in the mansion's pond to death. "A stuck-up prick, and he dares to marry me. I don't want to be forced into an arranged marriage. At the very least, I deserve to be matched with a prince." She cursed at Lu Qingshan within the Prime Minister's residence. By unfortunate coincidence, the maid she sent to investigate mistook the second-place scholar, a man nearly 40 years old, for Lu Qingshan, and hastily reported back to her. That day, I sat in a tavern by the street, just as Lu Qingshan happened to ride past on horseback. His brows and eyes were calm. His red robe passed through the street, the corners of his lips slightly curved, bringing out a young man's charm. I lifted the window. That person happened to look up, his dark eyes clear without a hint of arrogance. His gaze so transparent it seemed as if he wanted to see into my heart. The maid beside me laughed exaggeratedly. "Miss, this future second brother-in-law is looking over. He is so handsome." My mind was in a trance. In that instant, I recalled how my legitimate younger sister always went on about how she said, "That I'm doing well isn't because I'm legitimate and you're a concubine born, but because I'm smarter than you." But being blessed as she was, naturally she didn't know that those who are favoured always have it better, regardless of legitimate or concubine-born status. Father favoured Fang Zishu. He put in endless effort to choose a husband for her, while for my marriage, he was stingy with even the slightest bit of thought. At my feet, the embroidered handkerchief lay shattered all over the ground. Fang Zishu sighed faintly. "Forget it. I came looking for you, not to pick a fight." She came to me because she needed something. During those days at the brothel, the madam only took her for a homeless little girl, drugged her and sold her to a household to be a concubine for a sickly man's good fortune. When my legitimate younger sister woke up, She saw that sickly wretch with his crooked eyes and twisted mouth, and in shame and fury tied him to the bed and beat him severely. That sickly wretch was frail as a willow. He died on the spot. My legitimate younger sister gripped my hand, her beautiful eyes full of emotion. Sister, I've gotten into trouble again this time. You're the best to me. You must have a way. Fang Zishu spoke of it lightly, but I only felt a chill throughout my body. That was a human life. I staggered to my feet and shook off her hand. I have no way to help you either. You've got the wrong person. That dead sickly guy wasn't just anyone. He was the only son of the Chief Justice of the Court of Judicial Review. Fang Zishu pouted and said that sickly guy deserved to die anyway. It was just her bad luck to accidentally injure him by mistake. This isn't like attending school for you, showing off for you, or taking punishment for you. My expression was displeased as I firmly shook my head. That is a human life. A killer must pay with their life. Suddenly, my legitimate younger sister's pitiful and delicate expression froze, and she smiled viciously. Oh my, that is not up to you, sister. Those few days I used sister's face to flaunt around the city. If you don't help me with this, then I'll come clean to father and mother, and have them find a solution for me. Usually, we would always swap identities. She could impersonate me effortlessly. I trembled with anger all over. Fang Zishu smiled mischievously. Sister, think it over carefully. Otherwise, I'll have to confess to father and mother. She turned to leave. I hurriedly grabbed her. Wait, I'll take the blame for you. The Chief Justice gave his son a lavish funeral and turned white-haired overnight. Yet the killer, the concubine brought in for a joyous occasion, vanished like she'd evaporated from the world. Pause, notice Fang Hui's first move. She didn't choose refuse or expose, but instead chose pretend to agree, then secretly prepare the antidote. Core logic. Fang Zishu's mistaken belief. She thought Fang Hui would obediently die in her place. Fang Hui's actual strategy. She used this opportunity to gain the dependence of her legitimate mother and Fang Zishu, while secretly preparing the Viper revenge plan. System vulnerability revealed. What is Fang Zishu's most fatal flaw? She never saw Fang Hui as a person with independent thinking ability. She thought Fang Hui would continue to be her substitute tool, like she had been for the past dozen years. But she forgot, when a person is pushed to the edge, they either die or become more ruthless than their abuser. The brilliance of accumulating leverage Viper plan. Fang Hui bought 2 Vipers, one to accidentally bite the Empress, the other to prove she saved the Empress. Saving the Empress, this wasn't kindness but a precise investment. She traded one risky move for the Empress's arranged marriage and protection. Continue watching how she converts this Empress's favor into a protective charm to escape marrying the domestic abuser. All of Luoyang was in an uproar, but the Court of Judicial Review minister didn't even investigate the Prime Minister's residence. Fang Zishu said nonchalantly, "Sister is truly blessed. That Court of Judicial Review minister investigated cases his whole life, yet couldn't even find the real culprit who killed his son." I couldn't smile and returned to my small courtyard. I know better than her that the truth will come out sooner or later. If father and the main wife find out, they'll only make me Fang Zishu's scapegoat. Outside the door, someone knocked and entered. It was Fang Zishu's maid. Perhaps because Lu Qingshan would be at the spring exploration banquet, this time Fang Zishu let me attend. The carriage jolted. Perhaps seeing my pale face, the 2 maids monitoring me asked perfunctorily, "Miss, what is wrong with you?" "It is nothing. Just my monthly cycle." The year I first got my period, the main wife deliberately threw her bracelet into the pond and made me retrieve it before I could come ashore. Since then, I've suffered from chronic illness. Every time my period comes, it is like torture. At the spring exploration banquet, many noble ladies and talented young men came. Only I wore a veil. Everyone was accustomed to it. Fang Zishu, legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's residence, liked to wear a veil when going out. Lu Qingshan was indeed there too. He dressed plainly and simply, his green robes dignified. A true gentleman of upright character, the news of Fang Zishu and his affair had caused a sensation throughout the city. The young man beside him laughed and said, "Brother Lu, I heard your happy occasion with the Fang family's legitimate daughter is approaching. Is this true?" Another official's son jumped in. That day he didn't agree to Prime Minister Fang. Brother Lu doesn't think much of the Prime Minister as a father-in-law, does he? At these words, many people's expressions changed. Mockery, awkwardness, shock. Especially those young masters from official families who came to seek marriage with Fang Zishu but were thrown out. What others couldn't obtain even if they begged, Lu Qingshan actually didn't want. Lu Qingshan's expression remained unchanged. I'm just a commoner in plain clothes. How could I delay the precious daughter of the Prime Minister's family? Everyone immediately quieted down. Those young masters from official families who loved Fang Zishu but couldn't have her sympathetically patted his shoulder. Brother Lu, no need to belittle yourself. One day you'll surely soar like Qing Yun. The volume of their conversation was neither too loud nor too soft, just enough to reach my ears. I scoffed lightly. He simply didn't want to marry Fang Zishu, but phrased it so gracefully. The maid beside me also looked both shocked and agitated, because Fang Zishu had long insisted that Lu Qingshan was pestering her, and recently had also sent people to spread rumors slandering him. Lu Qingshan probably didn't take it to heart, letting Fang Zishu make her little fuss. The maids gritted their teeth and said hatefully, "Miss, you must perform well later and make that Lu regret it." I smiled as usual. I was actually happy to see Fang Zishu lose face. This mother-daughter pair were both no good. Wolves that eat meat without spitting out bones at the banquet. Young ladies from various families displayed all sorts of talents, competing in splendor. The Qin family's young lady played the guzheng. The Song family's young lady painted. The Chu family's young lady danced. The young scholar's eyes went straight, not only red with envy, but also blushing. And I sat to the side leisurely drinking tea. The maids were as anxious as ants on a hot pan, whispering in my ear. Or young lady's title as Luoyang's famous beauty is about to be stolen away. At least do something. I already said I'm not feeling well today. I shifted my sitting position. How about having second sister come instead? The two maids immediately hushed. Usually when I attended banquets, Fang Zishu's carriage would wait nearby, ready to switch in after I finished showing off. Switching now with Fang Zishu's half-baked skills in music, chess, calligraphy and painting, she'd probably just become the laughingstock over tea and dinner. She cared most about her reputation. She wouldn't do something so foolish. At the spring exploration banquet, everyone was in high spirits. The Empress looked pleased, joy evident in the corners of her eyes. But her gaze swept over me. "Zishu seems unenthusiastic today. Perhaps you dislike this banquet." My expression changed and I put on a smile. This subject's daughter does not. Recently, the Empress Dowager celebrated her birthday, and I lack 100 longevities painting to give her as an auspicious gift. You shall paint one for me. The Empress suddenly turned her gaze to Lu Qingshan. The top scholar seems rather quiet today as well. I've heard your painting skills are also exquisite. Why don't you also paint? Since the Empress had already spoken, naturally there was only one thing to do: obediently comply. Just as Lu Qingshan and I were each preparing to paint, the Empress had someone bring out an 8-chi long sheet of Xuan paper and said with a smile, "One is a famous courtesan of Luoyang. The other is the current top scholar. I want you two to each paint half. Only this will be worthy of the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet." I nearly couldn't stand steady, and that Lu Qingshan also frowned slightly, clearly not wanting to get close to me either. The others tacitly agreed to have some fun and gathered around the fundi, with someone jeering, "TSK, TSK, this destined fate, you can't stop it even if you try." If the painting turned out well, Fang Zishu and Lu Qingshan would probably end up with another romantic tale. The maid tugged lightly at my clothes, mouthing to me, "Miss, you mustn't." I acted as if I hadn't heard. Fang Zishu was afraid of marrying Lu Qingshan, so I'd give her a hand. I put on a delicate, helpless expression and slowly walked toward Lu Qingshan. "Young Master Lu, you take the lead brush. I'll add embellishments. How about that?" Lu Qingshan nodded. "Fine." The two of us busied ourselves painting together, inevitably coming into contact with each other. But after a full half-hour passed, I still hadn't brushed against even a corner of Lu Qingshan's clothing. I finally understood. This guy was deliberately avoiding me. His eyes and brows were calm, his profile clean and handsome. When he wasn't paying attention, I staggered and fell toward his chest. Something hard and rigid propped up my waist. I looked up to see that Lu Qingshan's hand now held an extremely large and long painting brush. He supported my waist and said, "Stand still." He almost couldn't help but say out loud the words written all over his face. "Stay away from me, don't interfere with my painting." He didn't bother to hide even a bit of his disdain. I avoided the maidservant's ears and eyes, speaking to him privately in a voice only the two of us could hear. "Scholar Lu, I've been unable to sleep at night lately." I picked up my brush, my tone weary. "In my dreams, it is all your upright figure." Lu Qingshan's spine stiffened slightly. He pretended not to hear and turned to paint the immortal peaches, and I pressed on relentlessly. "The physician said what you think of by day, you dream of by night." He pressed his lips together, still maintaining that coffin-like expression, truly worthy of being the top scholar selected from 10,000, so utterly unperturbed. I continued fanning the flames. "To cure those strange dreams, I sleep every night holding your portrait. Scholar Lu wouldn't mind, would you?" With a smack. Lu Qingshan threw the painting brush aside, his face showing embarrassed anger. "The painting is done." He walked away without looking back. Beside me, quite a few young masters spoke polite words. "Brother Lu has worked hard. Look, he has painted himself into a complete sweat, face all flushed. This painting must have been extremely difficult." I curled my lips and looked up at Lu Qingshan's retreating figure. What he detested was Fang's issue. If the marriage went through, both would find each other repulsive. If the marriage fell through, Lu Qingshan would never marry her anyway. Afterward, I lowered my eyes, focused my mind on painting, and finally handed the painting to Her Majesty the Empress. The Empress exclaimed with admiration, "What a marvelous painting!" An inexplicable, strange feeling arose in my heart. Taking advantage of the banquet's end, I shook off Fang's issue's maid and took out the cloth pouch hidden in my sleeve. The unconscious thing was slowly awakening and wriggling. I recalled in my mind the snake seller's words. "This viper is highly venomous. It has been fed tuberose since young. As long as the person you wish to harm has tuberose on them, it will strike without fail." The Minister of the Court of Judicial Review has been running about announcing and making arrangements everywhere regarding his only son's death recently. Sooner or later, he will root out the real culprit. The Prime Minister's residence will certainly not protect me. If I weren't out of options, I wouldn't want to resort to this desperate measure. I gritted my teeth and pulled open the pouch. A blood-red snake tongue flicked toward me. Ah, but that snake lunged at me instead. I was scared out of my wits as I hastily retreated. I bumped into someone who had a clean scent of soap on them. He swiftly grabbed the snake's vital point 7 inches down, crushed it with his hand bones, and the viper twitched its golden black tail and died. Lu Qingshan said gently, "It is dead." I stared at that dead snake, both terrified and furious, grinding my teeth in hatred. That was my 40 tails. He strangled it to death with just one hand, but I was terrified he might see something he shouldn't. I took the opportunity to grab his wide sleeve and said coquettishly, "I'm most afraid of snakes. Hurry and throw it away." Lu Qingshan's gaze was suspicious, as if pondering. Now that he is on duty at the Court of Judicial Review, constantly reviewing case files and interrogating criminals, he won't notice anything amiss, will he? My heart turned cold, but on the surface I climbed up the pole he offered. "You saved me. You're not thinking that a life-saving benefactor should repay with their body, are you?" Lu Qingshan tossed the dead snake into the bushes. He raised his eyes disdainfully and said, "Lu cannot accept such a thing." Until Lu Qingshan completely left, I switched off my tearful, pitiful expression and returned to my usual cool demeanor. I took out another cloth pouch, inside which was an identical viper. The banquet had long since ended. The Empress's phoenix carriage walked ahead, with a crowd of women following close behind to the palace to burn incense and worship Buddha as customary. A cry of alarm came from the phoenix carriage ahead, and the maids screamed in panic. "Ah, a snake! Protect Her Majesty the Empress!" "Oh no, Her Majesty the Empress has been bitten." Screams rose and fell, frightening the noble ladies badly, all afraid the snake would dart onto them. I steadied myself, grabbed my skirt hem and ran outside. The Empress had been bitten and was already showing signs of poisoning. The poison took effect rapidly. Without hesitation, I sucked out the snake venom mouthful by mouthful. The empress struggled to keep her eyes open in a daze. Who are you? This humble woman is Fang Hui, eldest daughter of the Prime Minister's residence. I replied neither humbly nor arrogantly. I'm attending the banquet in my sister's place this time. That evening, news of the Empress encountering a snake on her return from the spring exploration banquet spread through every street and alley, and the news that a daughter of the Prime Minister's residence had sucked out the snake venom for the Empress and was now in critical condition also spread throughout Luoyang. Everyone said that the Prime Minister's daughter was purely and utterly good, to actually dare exchange life for life. When I woke up, I was lying in a small courtyard of the Prime Minister's residence. My personal maid Hongdo cried her heart out. Miss, second miss has stolen your credit again. Fang Zishu, as usual, replaced me, and to make people believe it, she pretended to be unconscious from residual poison for 2 days, and during the days I was unconscious, the mistress had someone throw me back to the small courtyard without calling a doctor for me. I had expected this all along. She really wanted to silence me permanently. If I hadn't taken the antidote early on, I would have already died by now. I said softly to Hongdu, "Don't cry, I'm still alive." This girl was assigned to me by the mistress when she was young because of her small stature, and we've been dependent on each other ever since. She has been worried sick these past few days. Hongdu wiped her tears and asked hesitantly, "Miss, who is Lu Qingshan? You kept muttering this name while you were unconscious just now." The bronze mirror reflected my face full of disbelief. A sudden warmth rose within me, and I could only answer vaguely. It seems the hunting dog Her Majesty the Empress brought today is named Qingshan. Surnamed Lu Fangzishu had been having an excellent few days. She had saved the Empress, and her father would grant Fangzishu anything she asked for, never mentioning that Lu Qingshan again. Fangzishu rode this wave of glory, telling everyone she met, "People do heaven watches. As long as one has a kind heart, there will surely be a good ending." Her words rang true and sincere. The noble women of Luoyang all admired her after hearing this, their faces showing guilt, for after all, not everyone dared to risk their life to save others. In just a few short days, Luo Zishu's reputation soared. When the common people mentioned her, they only knew that the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's residence had the heart of a bodhisattva. There were also rumors in the court that Fang Zishu would be the destined crown princess. And I stayed in my small courtyard every day, listening to Hongdu relay the news she'd gathered from outside. The little maid was full of indignation, missed to let her steal the spotlight. "You've suffered so much since childhood learning music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. This time she harmed you, truly no good deed goes unpunished. I suffered for myself, never for others." I shut the door tightly. No one's suffering goes to waste. If it does, it must be that the time when suffering ends and sweetness comes hasn't arrived yet. I remember when I was young and attended school, Fang Zishu was lazy by nature, utterly clueless about music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, yet I was diligent and studious, which got in the way of the mistress's eyes. I knelt before the main wife and said I was learning these skills for Fang Zishu's sake, and in the future I would steal the spotlight for Fang Zishu, letting her live a glorious life as a distinguished young lady. The main wife, coveting that empty reputation, agreed. Later, as I substituted for her more and more times, Fang Zishu no longer dared to bully me using her status as the legitimate daughter. Instead, she became polite to me, begging me to attend banquets in her place. Otherwise, I would have been like the other concubine-born daughters, ending up bullied and mistreated, hastily married off. Hongdu said gloomily. "That second miss doesn't even have to suffer. Yet she gets everything." I smiled calmly. The Empress only woke up yesterday. What is the rush? The Empress had finally fully awakened. The Empress's decree was delivered from the palace. The main wife, beaming with joy, knelt on the ground along with Fang Zishu and a group of female family members. But the eunuch delayed reading the decree. The eunuch politely inquired, "Madam Fang, are all the people in the mansion assembled?" The 7-year-old legitimate son, who had been kneeling for too long, could no longer sit still. He shouted loudly, "My second sister has been kneeling here for ages. Why aren't you issuing the decree?" "Who says this decree is for your second sister?" the eunuch said in a sarcastic tone, rolling his eyes. "Madam Fang, I won't mince words with you. This decree is for the Prime Minister's eldest daughter, Feng Hui. All the female family members of the Prime Minister's residence were shocked. How did that frail concubine-born daughter who doesn't even leave her room win the Empress's favor? Wasn't it second miss who saved the Empress? That is right. Only the second young lady attended the banquet that day. Fang Zishu had a guilty conscience. Hearing the eunuch's words, her face turned deathly pale. But she still tried to save face by asking if there was some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding you, a mere subject's daughter, dare to question the Empress? The eunuch sneered lightly. A cuckoo occupying the magpie's nest. That one phrase, a cuckoo occupying the magpie's nest, made Fang Zishu lose all face. She collapsed to the ground, looking both hatefully furious yet unwilling to accept it. When I knelt to receive the imperial decree, Fang Zishu looked aggrieved with tears in her eyes as if I had bullied her. The day I sucked out the snake venom, the Empress was half conscious. She had asked me what I wanted. I said, "This subject's daughter only wishes to live." The Empress could naturally guess what goes on inside the deep courtyards of great households. But I never imagined she would grant me a marriage. The Empress bestowed me in marriage to the heir of Marquis Manor, that young talent of Luoyang City who was perfect in both character and appearance. The heir's name was Chu Zhan. Well, read in poetry and classics since childhood. His parents were devoted to each other. He passed the imperial examination as Tanhua at 16, became a magistrate in a small locality at 20, and worked his way back to Luoyang step by step. He was a good choice for a husband. This imperial decree felt so light in my hands, yet also extremely heavy. Heavy with the weight of the rest of my life written upon it. I staggered as I rose to my feet. The eunuch hurriedly supported me. "Oh my, young lady must stand steady. From now on you'll be the honored heir's wife." Since I received the imperial decree, Fang Zishu has shut herself indoors. One day she suddenly appeared in my room, grabbing my hand like a madwoman. "You come with me to see the Empress and tell her she remembered the wrong person, that I was the one who saved her." I sneered. "Why should I give you all the good things?" Fang Zishu vented her humiliation on me. "You're just the son of a concubine, nothing more than a servant in this household. As your master, it is only right that I can take your life. If you want to blame someone, blame your mother who insisted on being a concubine." She cursed for a long time, but I only heard the words, "Your mother insisted on being a concubine." I used all my strength to slap her across the face. Fang Zishu was knocked to the ground, looking in disbelief at me, who was usually gentle and docile. "You bitch, you dare hit me. Doesn't second sister always say that all people are equal?" My eyes showed disdain as I withdrew my hand. "When you argue with the princess, you can talk about equality, but in front of me, why do you bring up masters and servants?" Fang Zishu covered her face and cursed bitterly. "You're cunning and deceitful. If you hadn't interfered, how would the Empress have recognized you?" After shutting herself in her room for several days, she finally grew a bit of sense. "That is right, second sister." I smiled. "Without your noble status, how could I have risen so high?" She became furious and started fighting with me. When the mistress rushed over and saw the dearly beloved Fang Zishu crying her heart out, her eyes were filled with towering rage. Her voice was sharp and severe. "Fang Zishu, what have I told you since you were little? Your mother is the Prime Minister's wife. You are the legitimate daughter. In this world, she was born lowly and is destined to suffer endlessly. Why must you compete with her? What kind of life she lives is entirely up to our whim. How can we let her climb on top of you? Someone, come." This girl doesn't understand propriety and disregards hierarchy. Seize her and throw her in the woodshed. For 3 days, don't give her a single drop of water or a bowl of rice. As soon as these words were spoken, several guards rushed up to restrain me. Fang Zishu pitifully wiped away her tears, a sweet, naive smile finally blooming at the corners of her mouth. I suddenly felt dazed for a moment. If my mother were still alive, she definitely wouldn't let me suffer even the slightest grievance. But my mother died too early, and this mother-daughter pair had lived in pampered luxury for too long. Other people's lives were nothing but grass and dirt to them. I lowered my lashes and said quietly, "Madam Fang, guess what I said the day I saved the Empress?" Madam Fang frowned with suspicion. I sneered. I said my stepmother is vicious and makes things difficult for me and takes the greatest pleasure in tormenting me. If one day I die in the mansion, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape the blame either. Now even the main wife's face turned iron blue. She stepped forward and slapped me. You little bitch, what nonsense are you spouting? Nanny Wang, give her 30 slaps, I'm saying. I covered my face and glared viciously at the people around me. Now I'm the Empress's lifesaver, the future wife of the heir. If I don't live comfortably, anyone who has bullied me before can forget about staying alive. Several nannies and old women were scared into trembling, looking at mother with troubled expressions, and in the end did not make a move. The main wife was so angry her lips turned iron blue. I sneered and walked around to the deathly pale Fang's issue. The fact that second sister is a talentless and virtueless good-for-nothing won't be hidden much longer when the time comes. Don't lose face for the Prime Minister's manner. For these 10 years, Fang's issue had enjoyed unlimited glory, borrowing the name of Luoyang's famous lady. Now, having fallen in one day, she would definitely be mocked and ridiculed. She immediately panicked and cried. Her eyes read, "Mother, I don't want to be laughed at. I'll study right away." Study. The main wife was also at a complete loss, immediately submitting a card to find renowned teachers. This time she was probably truly afraid. The Prime Minister's residence was in great chaos. Only I lived peaceful days, watering flowers and planting grass daily. Hongdo was elated and brought me news from outside. The noble ladies are all rushing to distance themselves from second miss, saying she is full of lies, two-faced, afraid of losing their own reputations. Now when Fang's issue goes out, the noble ladies of Luoyang are nastier than one another, sarcastically mocking her for slapping her face to look fat. The mistress spent a fortune, using the Prime Minister's manor's name to hire teachers for Fang's issue, but was turned away at every door. When father found out, he was so furious, he slapped the mistress and scolded her for corrupting Fang's issue. Hongdu said, "This servant has never seen the master so angry. Madam comes from a noble family, and since entering the Prime Minister's residence, she has never suffered any grievance. That slap made her cry in the courtyard for days. Enough." I smiled indifferently and pinched Hongdo's cheek. We won't kick people when they're down. Gloating may feel good for a moment, but not for a lifetime. The affairs of this world naturally take turns like a wheel. Hongdu inserted the golden hairpin in my hair. "Miss, today young Master Chuao, shouldn't you dress up beautifully?" I smiled. With young Master Chu's status, he must have seen all kinds of beauties, and besides, I paused. Besides, if Chu Zhan were the type to be swayed by beauty, there'd be even less need to please him. After the carriage had travelled for a while, the driver stopped and reported, "Miss, there is an investigation ahead we can't get through." I pondered. "When will they finish?" A familiar voice came through stiffly. "If you don't step aside, this official won't leave today." That sentence wasn't directed at me, though. Outside, Lu Qingshan was dressed in scarlet official robes, leading a few junior officers. Not a high rank, but with an extremely upright character. Someone died at the inn. The innkeeper, relying on his connections with people above, refused to accept the investigation and threw a tantrum, blocking the entrance. When the two were in a heated argument, the innkeeper grabbed a brick and hurled it at Lu Qingshan. Unlucky for me, I had just gotten out of the sedan chair when a big brick came flying at my face. I couldn't dodge in time and got hit hard on the waist. I cried out in pain and slid to the ground, desperately winking at my maid. The maid understood and shouted loudly, "My young lady has been killed by the brick. Someone's dead, Your Honor, quickly arrest this criminal." The innkeeper was scared out of his wits. Lu Qingshan sent people to arrest him, and a group of officers took the opportunity to enter the inn. I sprang up from the ground, eyes curved with a smile as I said, "Scholar Lu, long time no see." Perhaps it was that phrase, Scholar Lu. Lu Qingshan's expression became rather unnatural. His tightly bound waist trembled, and he had his men clear a path for me. He pointed at the small torn hole in my clothes and said regretfully, "Scholar Lu, I ruined an outfit helping you out. First, this official did not ask for your help. He lifted that face of his clear as wind and bright as moon. Second, it was not this official who hit you with the brick. Lastly, this official is very busy. If Miss Fang has nothing else, please do not disturb my work. Disturb his work." What a case of good intentions being treated like dog's liver and lungs. I must have been kicked in the head by a donkey to get out of the sedan to watch him being put in a difficult position. But thinking it over, the whole city knows that Fang Zishu and I switched identities. That Lu Qingshan must know it was me at the banquet that day. I stepped back into the carriage. Hong Dao, if a man said to you upon first meeting that he thinks of you by day and dreams of you by night, how would you feel? Hong Dao looked puzzled, and finally she cursed. There is actually such a shameless lecher in this world. What if this person were a woman? A woman would be just as indecent. Hong Dao said timidly, but if this person is a young lady, then she is forthright and candid. I was left speechless. Feeling uneasy, I went to change my clothes. Chu Zhan had been waiting in the small room for quite a while. He had refined features and an air of nobility cultivated by overwhelming wealth and privilege. He leaned back slightly. Miss Fang, do you really want to marry me? What does the heir want to say? I put away my smile, feeling my heart being squeezed. I have no intention of breaking off this engagement, he said calmly. I already have someone I'm fond of. Unfortunately, that young lady married long ago. Simply put, there is only one thing to say. He doesn't love me, nor will he ever truly accept me as his wife from the bottom of his heart. I gently put down my wine cup, pretending to sound relaxed. Herr Chu, this arranged marriage is by imperial decree. You and I are both helpless in this, yet only the Marquis and his wife are happy to see it happen. This shows that even if it weren't me next time, the heir would still marry someone else. If I only take the position of the heir's wife, manage the household for you. Do not consummate the marriage. Do not interfere with you. And also do not concern myself with you. And that young lady, what do you think? Chu Zhan's dark eyes narrowed slightly. His hand tapped on the teacup, one tap at a time, as if contemplating. And finally he asked me, you truly can't have even the slightest bit of feelings for me? I answered cleanly and decisively. You and I have just met, rather. I should say I love the title of heir's wife more. Chu Zhan slowly curved his lips, finally believing my words. I prepared to return to the residence. At this inn, I unexpectedly ran into Fang Zishu. She was downstairs being picked on by noble ladies. Oh my, isn't this Luoyang's famous courtesan? Why don't you gather with us to compose poetry and match couplets? Fang Zishu had been dressing plainly recently, always wearing a white orchid jade hairpin in her hair, with a delicate willow-like appearance. Her face showed humility as she apologized to the noble ladies. In the past, I was extremely vain, which is why I ended up like this. I've already received my retribution, so why won't you all let it go? Several noble ladies' faces flushed slightly with embarrassment, and they left awkwardly. As soon as she turned around, she saw me, and instantly the corners of her eyes reddened slightly. Seeing me like this, sister must be extremely pleased, right? When a beauty shows even the slightest weakness, she becomes a picture of pitifulness. I laughed. You think too highly of yourself. This time, Fang Zishu's complexion turned genuinely, truly pale. Ever since bringing shame to the Prime Minister's residence, Fang Zishu completely changed from her previously flamboyant personality, bathing and burning incense daily, chanting scriptures and worshipping Buddha, and diligently practicing her musical skills. Though, by the looks of it, she really has turned over a new leaf. Recently, father has stopped being angry. He still dotes on Fang Zishu. Hongdu always loves to eavesdrop, then tells me, the master is preparing to arrange a marriage for second miss. Which family's young master? Hongdu said with a grin. It is the Zhuangyuan that second miss hates the most. The master said if she dislikes the Zhuangyuan for being poor, he'll give her a few extra sedan chairs worth of dowry. My heart trembled, and my finger was pricked by the embroidery needle, hurting so much I wanted to cry. Father really has calculated everything perfectly for Fang Zishu. Lu Qingshan comes from a simple family background, is a reliable person, and now handles the most exhausting, complicated, and difficult cases at the Court of Judicial Review. In just half a year, he has already shown his talent in the future. He'll surely rise to great heights like Qing Yun. If Fang Zishu marries into his family, she won't have to deal with sisters-in-law. She'll be the only one in charge of the household. Not to mention Lu Qingshan isn't like those official family young masters who put on airs. Even if Fang Zishu acts up a bit, he'll tolerate it. When parents love their children, they plan far ahead for them. Father is the same way with Fang's issue. Moreover, these past few days, Father has frequently invited Lu Qingshan to visit the residence. His intention to recruit a son-in-law is obvious to everyone. Today, Lu Qingshan is visiting the Lu residence. I sat restlessly fuming. Fang's issue is nothing but trouble. We can't let her marry out. Hongdu nodded. Miss, didn't you say you'd rather tear down a temple than ruin a marriage? I'm going to ruin his marriage. I lifted my skirt and stepped through the door. Who told him to strangle my 40 taels worth of viper to death? Today was a rest day. Lu Qingshan was playing chess with Father in the study. I stood in the small pavilion, and at the end of the path, 2 figures finally appeared. Lu Qingshan walked in front, dressed in casual wear, his posture upright. The servant followed closely behind, persuading, Young master, you saw the second young lady of the Prime Minister's residence today. She is dignified and virtuous, and was quite courteous to you in conversation. With Prime Minister Fang as such a powerful and high-ranking father-in-law, it would greatly benefit your official career. Moreover, you're handsome, and the second young lady is charming and lovely. You're truly a perfect match. Lu Qingshan looked somewhat distracted, replying, Indeed, indeed. I found it grating to my ears. In a fit of anger, I spotted a large water vat nearby used for watering flowers. I grabbed the wooden ladle and poured it down forcefully. The 2 passing by were instantly drenched like drowned rats. When Lu Qingshan looked up, his eyes showed slight anger. I feigned innocence, my eyes guileless. Oh, my scholar Lu, what are you doing down there? The man couldn't vent his anger. Just as he was about to lift his leg and leave, I blocked his path with small steps and a smile. Lu Qingshan was forced to retreat a step, putting on that coffin face from on duty, move aside. I accidentally splashed water while watering flowers and hurt you 2 esteemed guests. I wrung the embroidered handkerchief with both hands, looking shocked and frightened. If Father finds out, he'll surely punish me. I beg you both to come with me to change your clothes. Lu Qingshan sneered coldly, biting out each word. No need. I spoke in gentle, soft tones, persistently pestering him, clinging extra tight. The young servant softened for a moment and pleaded for me. Young master, the eldest miss means well. Besides, walking out of the residence in soaking wet clothes wouldn't look good either. Lu Qingshan was cold and hard as a blade. How do I know she won't toy with me? Toy with? I frowned. When had I ever toyed with him? I swear to heaven. I raised 2 fingers, my gaze resolute. If I toy with you, may Father be struck by lightning, may he be childless for life. Lu Qingshan pondered for a moment. Lead the way. The moment I turned around, a triumphant gleam flashed in my eyes as I exchanged a look with Hongdu. The young servant was sent away. Lu Qingshan was led by me to a secluded small courtyard. The moment his front foot stepped through the door, my back foot slammed the lock shut with a clang. Lu Qingshan's spine stiffened, a flash of thin anger at being deceived again flickering through his dark eyes. I had locked him in my boudoir. I smiled with curled lips. Ahoy really wants to know what you said to Father. His gaze fell on his own black boots. No comment. That statement was so distant, it made me especially displeased. Then in Scholar Lu's eyes, what kind of person am I? I pressed him step by step, starting to act unreasonably. If you don't tell me, I'll strip you. You. Lu Qingshan wanted to push me away. But when his hands landed, he didn't know where to push, so he could only let anger accumulate in those dark eyes. If you don't tell me, I'm really going to untie it. I pestered him relentlessly, but his mouth was sealed tight. I admitted defeat. Fine, I'm not someone who bullies others aggressively. He pressed his lips together without speaking. You must have heard the saying, snakes and rats in the same nest. Whatever kind of person I am behind the scenes, that is what kind of person Fang's issue is. We're family, naturally birds of a feather. If you marry her, your household will never know peace, and your family line will be cut off. I spoke until my mouth was parched and tongue dry. Looking up with a glance, I saw Lu Qingshan staring deeply at me. His eyes were extremely pale after a moment of daze. He said, I panicked. Did he actually understand what I was saying? Perhaps because I was pressing on his waist, he spoke again, his tone a bit gentler. I won't marry her. Can you let go of my waistband now? He finally understood, and even questioned me like interrogating a criminal. My household never knowing peace and my family line being cut off. What does that have to do with you? Lu Qingshan was too calm at this moment and too perceptive, making me feel utterly ashamed as if he'd seen right through me. I was stunned for a moment, then said flawlessly, "You're a good person. Good people should have good endings. Fang Zishu isn't worthy of you." Lu Qingshan left. Looking up, Hongdu stared at me strangely. She stammered, "Miss, your wedding date with the heir is approaching. We should avoid contact with outside men. The heir will be angry if he finds out." I frowned slightly, not answering her. Beyond the ridiculousness, there was a faint, almost imperceptible sadness. Men can marry and still fool around with others, but this world has always been harsh on women. In the future, when I manage the inner household in the deep courtyard, how many Lu Qingshans will I meet in this lifetime? From now on, there will be none. Love is the most worthless thing in the world, yet it is also the rarest. I'm just one of the countless souls who won't find fulfillment. After that day, Lu Qingshan never appeared at the Prime Minister's manor again. As the June wedding date approached, the wedding dress the mistress prepared for me was a full inch too wide. I was too lazy to tell her about it, and just went to see father, saying, "Father, your daughter will be married soon." I wished to pay respects to mother. Back then, my mother died by crashing into a pillar, her body reduced to nothing. But I know she was hidden away by the man before me. In the past, my status was lowly, and I dared not show my attachment to my late mother. I've kept it in my heart for many years, waiting only for today. Father sat in the hall with great authority. His voice was steady. When Yunxi died, I was not in the mansion. Her body was disposed of carelessly long ago. No one knows which wilderness it ended up in. Let the past be the past. The past, just let it be the past. My hands pressed against the ground trembled slightly. Father abandoning his wife and child is already a done deal. Why do you think everything will disappear with mother's death? Before me, father in his dark purple official robe was furious, slamming down a wolf hairbrush. "Shut up." I abruptly stood up, questioning him with tears. Is it that my mother's status was too shameful to mention, or is it that father feels guilty and fears others bringing her up? Back then, father was merely a scholar in a humble dwelling, whom everyone could bully. Abandoning her for your official career was your choice. But today you hold a high position. Others fear you, look up to you. No one can control you anymore. You've obtained power above all others, but my mother is buried underground, bearing the stigma of being a mistress. What use is such overwhelming power if it cannot even protect the one you love? You don't dare let her be worshipped. Is it because you fear she'd know that you can't even take care of her daughter properly? The figure in dark purple had his back to me. His steps staggered. I call you father because mother only spoke of your good points, never your bad. I raised my head. In her entire life, she never did a single thing to wrong you, nor did she ever resent you. Behind the screen, that tall figure was tainted with an air of defeat. His voice was weary. She really didn't blame me. He might be recalling the Tenli village, Tenli lotus ponds, the water towns of Jiangnan. My mother was his childhood sweetheart. He was the scholar who could read in the surrounding villages, and they reached the age for marriage. Their parents made the decision. The two families became in-laws. The newlyweds were still in their honeymoon period when the village butcher, consumed by jealousy and hatred, first killed his parents, then taking advantage of his frailty, night after night entered their tent to violate his wife right in front of him. Reporting to the authorities yielded no results. With nowhere else to turn, he went to Luoyang to take the imperial examination. Before leaving, he said to Yunyang, wait for me. Once I attain some official position, I will make that beast die, give you fine clothes and rich food, and ensure you a lifetime free of worries. My mother waited for him in the village, but he never returned. Only 1 year, when the pond was full of summer lotuses, the butcher's house was consumed by a raging fire. Someone found several charred bone fragments in the butcher's house, and that butcher never appeared again. From then on, my mother raised me by selling embroidery and making tofu to support us. Since childhood, people in the village called me a bastard. I cried and asked her, "Mother, whose child am I?" My mother would always hold me and gently stroke the top of my head, saying, "You are mother's child." The Prime Minister's residence has countless embroiderers, but there is not a single handkerchief like the ones my mother embroidered. I can only embroider day after day for decades, hoping to replicate one of my mother's handkerchiefs. Never again will there be a handkerchief that resembles an old friend. Father couldn't hide his bewildered expression, slumping down at the desk, lips trembling. Did she truly never resent me? I walked around the screen. What use is resenting you? I helped him up. The one who caused her death wasn't you. You simply didn't know the truth before Mother died. The truth. He froze for a moment, his eyes full of bloodshot as he clutched my collar. Wasn't Yun Yang beaten to death by the guards of the Prime Minister's residence who mistook her for a beggar? I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. Father was busy with affairs. Everyone in the mansion was under the matriarch's control. After she humiliated my mother, she forced my mother to kill herself by running into a pillar. Afterwards, she covered it up, and I was so young back then. That venomous woman. Overwhelming hatred flashed in Father's eyes. "All right, go pay your respects to your mother first." In that instant, a dark glint passed through my eyes as I recalled that day decades ago when Mother died. That day, Mother held me as she entered the Prime Minister's residence to acknowledge our kinship. As it happened, Father was not in the mansion. At that time, the matriarch, daughter of a duke, deliberately made things difficult for us, mother and daughter. There is no such thing as having your cake and eating it too in this world. Only one of you two can enter the Prime Minister's residence. Keep the mother and abandon the child, or keep the child and abandon the mother. Mother had a weak temperament, yet she was extremely perceptive. She only thought that if she died, the man she loved would not be put in a difficult position in the slightest. But she never considered how a child without a mother would survive in this world. My mother's ashes were in the secret chamber of the study in the Prime Minister's residence. I opened it joyfully, only to find withered white bones in the box. I pressed my face against the white bones and shed tears. "Mother, I'm going to be married. The wedding dress doesn't fit, and the one I'm marrying is not someone my heart desires. But I will soon, very soon, be able to avenge you." The moment I stepped out of the study, I had already dried my tears. Father still stood there for a long time. Before him was unmistakably my mother's portrait. Several days later, several concubines entered the mansion one after another. The main wife flew into a rage. She quarreled furiously with Father. "Fang Lingkai, you said you'd only love me in this lifetime. You said you'd never take concubines again." Father said indifferently, "A man should have 3 or 4 wives to begin with. It is you who is jealous." After hearing this, the main wife stumbled away, crying back to her room. She left harsh words. If Father didn't drive those little bitches out of the mansion, he shouldn't bother coming to see her. She thought that after making a scene, Father would lower his head and coax her like he had countless times before. But she forgot. My dad was no longer the poor top scholar who started from nothing back in those days. Moreover, he knew the truth about his first wife's death. For half a month straight, not only did Father not coax her, he spent every night in those concubines' rooms instead. The usually composed main wife panicked. In humiliated fury, she executed one of the concubines in the mansion simply because that concubine said something she didn't like. I asked carelessly, "What did that concubine say?" She said behind her back that the master is now so bewitched by her, he can't even remember his promise of a lifetime with the madam. Hongdo sighed. What a pity that concubine was already 1 month pregnant. I had expected as much and mused. A lifetime. That is too long. The lifelong devotion my mother never got to have. What gives her the right? Back then, the news of the Duke's daughter falling for the top scholar and willingly giving up wealth and glory to live a poor life with him caused quite a stir. And Father, grateful that she, a Duke's daughter married down to him, had not taken any concubines for many years. The several children in the mansion were all born from her. Over the years, the two were loving and respectful to each other, a divine couple in the eyes of so many. Everyone said the Duke's daughter had married well. But there was never such a thing as lifelong devotion in this world, only the present moment. It turned out even the high and mighty Duke's daughter would one day lose her temper like a shrew. After that pregnant concubine died, father flew into a rage, personally stormed into the main wife's courtyard, slapped her across the face, and had her confined. The main wife was also indignant, saying through tears, "You climbed to the position of prime minister using the duke's mansion, and now you plan to let me die so you can remarry. Is that it?" The veins on father's forehead bulged as he laughed maniacally. "I never knew you were so vicious, killing a living person just like that. Back then, was this how you drove Yunyang to it too?" He didn't care about the dead concubine. What he cared about was that his cherished bedmate turned out to be so vicious. She was never the innocent and kind, noble lady from back then. The mistress's face changed dramatically, her lips pale. "You? Why are you doing this for that woman? She was beaten to death by the guards. I had no idea about this." Father's eyes were filled with crimson red, letting out a painful roar as he suddenly pushed her down to the ground. "You're still lying." The next day, the mistress's face covered in tears, received a divorce letter and was driven out of the Prime Minister's residence, shocking all of Luoyang. Everyone gossiped about it over tea and meals. Prime Minister Fang favors his concubine and destroys his wife. Let me interrupt for a moment. Notice Fang Hui's second operation. She didn't directly attack the legitimate mother, but rather used father's hand to make the legitimate mother destroy herself. Core logic, first layer emotional manipulation. Fang Hui tells father, mother was driven to death by the legitimate mother, ignites father's guilt and rage. Second layer, resource mobilization. Father takes a concubine, legitimate mother gets jealous, kills the pregnant concubine. Father uses murder as grounds to divorce his wife. Third layer, social death. After legitimate mother is divorced and returns to the Duke's residence, her children are abused by the princess as she kneels at the Prime Minister's residence, gate begging for mercy. Why is this revenge pattern most lethal? Because it is not violence for violence, but rather letting the opponent collapse within their own character flaws. The legitimate mother kills out of jealousy, father divorces out of guilt. Fang Zishu's status plummets due to losing her mother's protection, prediction, and countermeasure. Next, what Fang Hui needs to do is exploit Fang Zishu's vanity, making her voluntarily marry Chu Zhan, who doesn't love her, and then be tormented to madness by Lin Linger at the Marquis Manor. Watch how she uses the information Chu Zhan's mother despises women without talent to force Fang Zishu to actively seduce Chu Zhan. Back then, Prime Minister Fang had a childhood sweetheart as a concubine, and even wanted to elevate her to equal wife status, but couldn't win against Madame Fang. Who knew that 10 years later Madame Fang would actually fall to an 18-year-old maid concubine? I sat among the seats wearing a veil. This was merely a divorce. She returned to the Duke's manor and still lived a pampered life, but her children couldn't. All because father remarried. His appearance was exceptionally fine. When the widowed princess of the current dynasty learned he had divorced his wife, she turned around and petitioned the emperor to marry her to him. That princess was only 25 years old, still young. She couldn't tolerate even a grain of sand in her eyes, especially towards the half-grown children in the Prime Minister's residence. She was particularly impatient, beating and scolding them at the slightest provocation. Father had no good temper towards her. The princess vented her anger on his children. I had someone relay this news to the mistress far away at the Duke's manor. That night, the mistress anxiously stood outside the Prime Minister's residence, begging to go in and see the children. Who knew the princess ordered people to block her outside the mansion, and deliberately across a wall beat and scolded her 7-year-old young son. The young child's cries filled the air, calling out, "Mother, stop hitting me, Shuna knows his mistake." Outside the residence, she cried until she was physically and mentally exhausted, begging for mercy. "Princess, he is just a child. Please spare him. Come at me for anything." I stood at the entrance, watching this woman who was once so high and mighty now humbly begging the princess. When she saw me, as if making up her mind, she crawled towards me. Her expression was ingratiating. "Ah Hui, you're the eldest sister. Could you look after your younger siblings for the sake of how I took care of you all these years?" I smiled brightly and kicked her away. "You still don't know, do you? It was I who mentioned to the princess daily about the past harmonious relationship between you and father, which made her hate you so much." I turned around and walked back into the Prime Minister's residence. listening to this woman's painful pleas for mercy, feeling a sense of great revenge fulfilled in my heart. 10 years ago, she also used power and status to coerce me, forcing my mother to her death by collision. Thinking about it, my mother must have also protected her child like this, must have also cried and begged for mercy like this. What a pity. In this world, karma is clear as day. It is all cause and effect. If she hadn't stolen my mother's husband, she could have lived in silk and luxury, worry-free for life. When Hongdao tugged at my sleeve for the 8th time, I grew somewhat impatient. She said softly, "Miss, Scholar Lu's carriage is also in front of the Prime Minister's residence. You shouldn't say too much." I stiffly turned my head back, and sure enough, a plain and simple green carriage had stopped not far away. The wind lifted the curtain, revealing a white jade chin above the round collar of a green robe. Father has invited quite a few officials to the banquet. I suppose he is one of them. Seeing me press my lips together in silence, Hongdu tried to comfort me, saying that with such distance, he probably couldn't hear, and Lu Qingshan shouldn't think much of it. He can think whatever he wants. I didn't stop walking. I never said I was kind. Absolute goodness in this world only exists in those of high position. For the little people in this fleeting world, being kind in all matters will only get you bullied. Like my mother and me. Ever since the main wife was cast out, Fang Zishu's status plummeted. Even father rarely came to see her. She shut herself in, spending every day confined to her courtyard to cultivate her character. Hongdu kept watch day after day and finally found something. She said that Fang Zishu would climb over the wall every evening after dusk. I picked a day and followed her out. Hongdu clung to me. "Miss, I want to go out too." I shook her off. "Go back and pretend to be me. Don't let anyone find out." I tailed Fang Zishu the whole way. She stopped at a broken bridge. During the Lantern Festival Luoyang was holding recently, Fang Zishu wore a veil to hide among the crowd. With her arms around a young man's waist, she said coquettishly, "I won the bet. I knew you'd come, you." The man gave a tug with his hand and laughed helplessly. "You always know how to handle me." The two of them held hands and disappeared into the crowd, and I froze in place, my mind drifting back to these past days when Hongdu told me that young Master Chu had a flirtatious girl on the side. That girl knew full well that young Master Chu and I had already been granted an imperial marriage. Yet she deliberately used repaying a favor as an excuse to bring him sour plum soup during the dog days of summer, to obtain protective amulets for him at the temple and to make bets with him. But I never expected that this noble young lady would turn out to be my dear sister, that sister who had always been so haughty, who would only consider celestial nobles worthy of her. I was momentarily dazed. Move aside, ox cart coming through. When I looked up, an ox cart was coming straight at me. The driver knocked me to the ground, then took advantage of the chaos to flee. I furrowed my brows in pain, my leg hurting to the bone. Just as I got up, I fell hard to the ground again. A hand reached out to me, slender and clean. Lu Qingshan strode quickly through the crowd, his expression slightly tense. "Why didn't you dodge?" My emotions were complicated as my gaze fell on the girl who had followed behind him with small steps. She looked disinterested, holding a flower lantern in her hand, and Lu Qingshan also had a flower lantern in his hand. The two had been releasing flower lanterns together when they happened to run into me. I turned my face away in embarrassment and shook off his hand that was trying to help me up. "Young Master Lu, you and I are not that familiar. You've spent years studying the classics. Do you not even understand the distinction between men and women?" The atmosphere at the scene plunged into an icy abyss. The girl beside him urged, "What an ungrateful person. Young Master Lu, let's go." Lu Qingshan's lips pressed together. After he said something to that young lady, she turned and left in displeasure. His brows and eyes were gentle. Unlike when he is on duty, he held down my leg and said, "But the injured know no difference between men and women. You dislike me. But set that aside for now. Working at the Court of Judicial Review." He had probably seen broken bones before. He skillfully pressed along my leg with practiced ease. "Does it hurt?" I frowned hard, yet inexplicably felt my nose sting. Since Mother passed away, no one cared anymore where I bumped or knocked myself. No one cared whether I hurt or not. He was focused on setting the bone. Looking up, he saw tears streaming down my face. Somewhat flustered, he said, "Bear with it a moment and it won't hurt anymore." "I can't bear it." I leaned closer to him, softly aggrieved. "If you give me a kiss, it won't hurt anymore." Lu Qingshan's hands froze. A trace of panic flashed across his fair face. "What?" I said. I looked at him with innocent eyes. "If you're gentler, it won't hurt anymore." The lantern by his feet was suddenly blown over by the wind, spilling lamp oil all over the ground. The physician that Lu Qingshan had sent that young lady to fetch came back. The physician shook his head and sighed. "Sir, you've already set it back in place for her. What is left for this old man to do?" Lu Qingshan said nothing and gave him the consultation fee. His face resumed its usual indifference as he said, "I'll have someone go to the Prime Minister's residence to send word for them to come get you." I lowered my head slightly. I snuck out. "Then I'll take you back," Lu Qingshan said to the young lady beside him. "Ru Yi, you go back first." "Lu Qingshan." That girl was so angry she was about to cry. "You reject me every time. Today I finally got some free time to come out. And what is she to you?" I still had tears in my eyes, gently wiping them away, saying in a delicate voice, "Young Master Lu, I don't want to make things difficult for you either. You accompany this young lady to release the lanterns. My leg has already healed. I can walk back by myself." After saying that, I forced myself to stand up, but accidentally stumbled and fell straight toward Lu Qingshan. Lu Qingshan caught me and said worriedly, "No, I should still escort you back first." That girl left in anger. When I returned to the Prime Minister's residence, I still pretended to hop along as I went in. Finally, Lu Qingshan raised his eyelids slightly. "Stop pretending. I know you can walk." I showed an embarrassed smile. "Oh, seems like it." A trace of unease appeared on his usually calm face as he said, "That girl just now is the niece of the Chief Justice of the Court of Judicial Review. I won't marry her either. Who cares whether you marry her or not?" I concealed the joy in my heart. "You don't seem to like her anyway." The two of us stood facing each other in silence. In the end, I was the first to turn around. After walking a few steps, I forcibly suppressed the urge to look back, because I knew he was watching me too. I had just returned to the Prime Minister's residence when Fang Zishu came back right after. "Second sister, where did you just go?" I sat waiting for her in her courtyard, stroking the warm jade bracelet on my wrist, and said, "I visited the Marquis Manor's lady a few days ago, and she gave me a bracelet. Help me take a look at it." Fang Zishu impatiently wanted to get rid of me. She glanced at the bracelet. "How petty. You were bought off by a mere bracelet," I said faintly. "This was bestowed by the founding empress to the lady of the Chu family when they were granted the title of Marquis, passed down through generations. Now it has been passed to me, exactly the third generation." Fang Zishu's lips turned pale. "What are you trying to say?" "When my fiancé was 16, he had a sweetheart, but because his mother despised that girl for being untalented, they were forced to break it off," I said with feigned worry. "The Chu heir even left Luoyang for this, and served as a county magistrate in some remote backwater for several years. Tell me, if the lady of Marquis Manor despises me for being untalented, will I still be able to marry in? The current lady of Marquis Manor is a woman who truly came from a scholarly family. She had declared, 'My son shall not marry anyone without talent.' Chujan's sweetheart was just a bit foolish, so his mother interfered and the two parted ways." Hearing this story, Fang Zishu's face turned ashen, muttering to herself, "That can't be. The lady of Marquis Manor surely isn't that kind of person." I sighed with worry. Fortunately, I've been diligent since childhood, and my skills in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting weren't learned in vain. I should at least be able to converse with my mother-in-law. Fang Zishu's face turned deathly pale. She hastily made up an excuse and drove me out of the courtyard. A month later, I heard that Fang Zishu had been drowsy every day, always unable to eat well. She suddenly appeared before me. "Sister, your good days are over." I feigned curiosity. "Oh, young Master Chu has already promised me to petition the Empress to annul his engagement with you." Her brows and eyes soared with delight. "Stunningly beautiful. Fang Hui, you don't have that fate." I was so furious I nearly had a heart attack. "Fang Zishu, you're despicable. Fate is in one's own hands. I pursue my happiness and freedom. What is wrong with that?" Fang Zishu said matter-of-factly. Blame only yourself for having lofty ambitions but a paper-thin fate. Had you married into a humble household, you wouldn't have fallen to this state. A few days later, rumors vaguely circulated outside that young Master Chu personally petitioned the Empress, and the Empress spoke up, saying she would no longer interfere. That day, heavy rain poured down, holding a paper umbrella. I went to find Father. Father, I am determined to marry Chu Zhan. Please do not annul the engagement. I have done nothing wrong. If the Prime Minister's residence does not agree to annul the engagement, the Chu family's unilateral wish to annul means nothing. Father invited me into the room. He sighed. This engagement must be annulled. That Chu Zhan has someone he loves. If you marry him, I'm afraid you won't have a good life. Your daughter has no choice left. I kowtowed to the ground. I am but a concubine-born daughter. If my engagement is annulled, my future will be even worse. Father fell silent for a moment. He turned away, his tone resolute. This father will find you a good husband in the future. This father is doing this for your own good. Father, are you really doing this for my sake, or for Fang Zishu's sake? My eyes were red as I clutched at his official robe. Second sister and the Chu heir were improper before marriage, and she got pregnant, didn't she? Father didn't speak, which was tantamount to admitting it. After a long while, he said, Father knows this was Zishu's fault, but the mistake has already been made. You must stop dwelling on it. If you feel wronged when you marry in the future, I will arrange it according to the rules for a legitimate daughter and give you 81 extra loads of dowry to send you off in grand style. The rain is getting heavy. Go back. My whole body trembled as I knelt before the study door. Water drops from the eaves slanted down and dripped onto me. I asked him through tears, Father, am I not your child? Why must I yield to my sister in everything? Father didn't answer this question. Instead, he had someone send me away. I knew he was determined to shield Fang Zishu. He had already ordered the annulment of the marriage between our two families. The betrothal gifts the Chu family gave me were all returned, and he had even secretly discussed the marriage between Fang Zishu and Chu Zhan with the Chu family. While all this was happening, I stubbornly knelt before the Prime Minister's residence study, hoping for a chance to turn things around. Hongdu felt sorry for me. She wiped the water drops from my face and consoled me. The master said that when second Miss marries, as punishment, her dowry will all be empty. Miss, does that make you feel any better? I shook my head. If one hasn't reclaimed the justice that belongs to them, how can one be happy? My mother was, and so am I. I kneel here today not before a father who holds high position, but before my mother buried deep in the study. From this day forward, Ohui can no longer be a good person. Please forgive Ohui. The rain drizzled down upon me. A paper umbrella suddenly covered over my head. The person wore upright blue robes, had handsome features, and looked at me with complexity in his dark eyes. Lu Qingshan. I caught sight of Hongdu not far away. She pursed her lips. Miss, I couldn't dissuade you, so I could only trouble Scholar Lu. Lu Qingshan normally doesn't even bother with trivial matters, yet today he was willing to make a trip to the Prime Minister's residence. I wonder what Hongdu said to him. I forced myself to stand, but fell headlong into his arms. He steadied my waist. That day when you told me not to marry Fang Zishu, was it merely because I'm a good person? After days of worry, I fainted. Everything that happened today, all of it went according to my plan. Only Lu Qingshan was unexpected. Fang Zishu is with child. The wedding is set for early next month, perhaps to preserve the face of the Prime Minister's residence and Marquis Manor. Both families sacrificed my reputation. Now all of Loyang City is spreading rumors that the Marquis Manor broke off the engagement because I have a terrible illness, which is why they switched to Fang Zishu. Father felt guilty and tried to find me several good families, but all of them refused one by one. I put down the embroidery in my hands, feeling it was laughable. Whether it was the promise he made to my mother or the promise he made to me, he had never fulfilled a single one. Hongdu suddenly came with a young servant to report good news to me. Miss, someone has come to propose marriage. Madam is receiving that family's lady right now outside the Prime Minister's residence. An extremely long line of betrothal gifts was laid out. This display was no less impressive than Chu Zhan's that day. The Marquis Manor's lady came to call in person. She said, half guilty and half uneasy, I'm here to propose marriage on behalf of the younger generation in my family. My husband has a younger sister who threw a tantrum and married far away, and she has an only son named Lu Qingshan, who currently works at the Court of Judicial Review. He has been begging me to come and ask for your eldest daughter's hand in marriage. So it was Lu Qingshan who came. Everyone in Luoyang only knew that Lu Qingshan was from Jinling, of humble family background, and his ancestors made a living by selling calligraphy and paintings. Who would have thought that his mother was the legitimate third daughter of the Marquis Manor back then, who eloped for his father and severed ties with the Marquis Manor for his father's sake. When Lu Qingshan was 3 years old, his mother died of illness. Since childhood, he lived with his father and never had any thoughts of social climbing. Now, he lowered himself, took the initiative to ask the Marquis Manor's lady to come propose marriage, and used the betrothal gifts the Marquis Manor had prepared for his mother. All just to give me dignity. Amid the crowd's congratulations, I stood among them, regardless of whether they were sincere or not. I only knew that perhaps I could marry the person I liked. I went to see father, I said with a firm gaze. Daughter has long stopped blaming father. I only hope that on my wedding day, I can have the 81 sedan chairs of dowry that father promised me. The Liu family's foundation is thin. This is the only way I can help him. From now on, dignity still has to be earned by oneself. The 6th day of the 8th month is auspicious for marriage. Fang Zishu and I were married on the same day. After she learned I had 81 sedan chairs of dowry, she was about to throw a big tantrum. Afterwards, her wet nurse stammered and told her, "Second, miss, our 81 sedan chairs of dowry are all filled with cotton." She held in a bellyful of anger and accidentally disturbed her fetal chi. The wedding that day was also extremely rushed. Her bridal sedan was carried into the eastern alley where high officials and nobles live, while my bridal sedan was carried into a humble, small alley. In the small courtyard, people came and went, full of festive cheer. When a woman helped me down from the sedan, she sighed. To make it livelier, the Lord invited many officials, but unfortunately most didn't come, so he invited some common folk to share in the joy. Today the Marquis Manor also had a grand wedding, and many high officials and nobles went to support the Chu family. I gripped the red silk in my hand even tighter and said softly, "It is fine. I love all of this, including my husband, whom I also love." Lu Qingshan and I bowed in the ceremony. He carried me into the bridal chamber and swept away the peanuts and red dates covering the bed, perhaps afraid they would press against me. He said gently, "I'll see the guests off first. If you're hungry, eat some pastries. If you're tired, sleep." He hadn't finished speaking yet. I reached out and wrapped my arms around his neck, breathing softly as I said, "Husband, drink less and come back early." He let me hold him for a while before turning to leave. It was nearly the hour of shu when the laughter and noise finally stopped. After Lu Qingshan saw off the guests, he stepped into the room. Today he wore bright red wedding robes that made his face look as fine as jade, just like when I first saw him parading through the streets as the top scholar. Red candles by the window. I looked down at the man half kneeling on the ground. He removed my shoes and placed my feet in a basin, washing them carefully and meticulously, saying with some guilt, "I've been living alone and there is no one in the household to serve others. Tomorrow I'll go to the employment agency to find 2 maids to attend to you." The infamous harsh official of the Court of Judicial Review, the top scholar who was always cold-faced, actually had such a gentle and considerate side. I curved my eyes with a smile, hooked my arms around his neck, pulled him onto the bed and said coquettishly, "I'm not someone who must have servants waiting on me. Why aren't you giving me cold looks today? The cold looks are for others to see." Lu Qingshan kissed my eyes, pressed my waist onto the bed and peeled away my layers one by one. Not for my wife. The red candles warmed the curtained bed, the doors and windows of the room shut tight, isolating all the noise within, leaving only low suppressed breathing and continuous soft moans. Lu Qingshan was like a tireless wild dog. I angrily wrapped myself in the blanket, sleeping pressed against the wall corner, threatening, "If you come near me again tomorrow I won't pay any attention to you." The second day. With no parents to serve tea to, the 2 slept until the sun was high in the sky before waking. In the courtyard there was only an old woman and Hongdo sweeping the yard. When I first woke, I only saw Lu Qingshan's pitch-black eyes as he held a bowl of tonic soup to feed me. Drink some soup first. There is porridge warming in the kitchen, being newly married. He didn't need to report for duty, but today he still had to make a trip to the Court of Judicial Review. After Lu Qingshan left, Hongdo sighed sadly. Madam, the master does everything himself. So what use am I in this courtyard? I smiled. The second day, the Chu family sent someone to invite Lu Qingshan to bring me to a banquet, perhaps remembering the falling out between Chu Zhan and me. Lu Qingshan said, "Are you feeling better? If you don't want to go, just stay home and rest. Since it is a family banquet, naturally I should go." My face reddened. Besides, that is your uncle's house. Lu Qingshan had always kept a low profile. If not for the marriage proposal, few people would probably know he was the Marquis Manner's nephew. The second day after the wedding, I heard that Chu Zhan didn't return home all night on his wedding night, only because his beloved had suffered a heart ailment. Fang Zishu was so angry she made a huge fuss, but even that couldn't summon Chu Zhan back. The Marquis and his wife felt guilty, so when Lu Qingshan and I just stepped into the mansion, we heard the Marquis's wife warmly greeting Fang Zishu. "Zishu, Zhan heir is unstable in temperament, don't take it to heart. Once the child is born, he'll surely settle down." Only then did Fang Zishu stop her act. "Mother, there are guests today. Will my husband come back?" Until Lu Qingshan and I entered hand in hand together, Fang Zishu's eyes were full of shock. The Marquis Manner's wife said warmly, "Qingshan, Ahui, wait a moment. Zhan heir will be back shortly." The Marquis Manner's wife and I had known each other for a long time. She quite liked me. I looked gently at Fang Zishu. "Little sister, you don't look too well. You should rest properly." "I'm perfectly fine." Fang Zishu wore a sour face. "I don't need your fake concern." Lu Qingshan's face remained calm, but his hand holding mine tightened. He sneered, "Cousin-in-law, my Ahui is showing concern for you. Why are you targeting her?" I pulled him back. "Little sister is straightforward. She is like this at home too. It is fine." Fang Zishu had always been blunt and quick-tongued. Before she was the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, had a heavenly beautiful face, and the title of Luoyang's most renowned lady, so people could praise her as straightforward and innocent. To put it bluntly, she just didn't know how to read the room. The Marquis's expression gradually grew impatient, weary of dealing with Fang Zishu. Lu Qingshan was his own younger sister's son, finally reunited with the family. So naturally he was more important. Taking advantage of the free moment, the Marquis Manner's lady pulled the womenfolk aside to chat. Her gaze fell on my belly as she asked, "Ah Hui, you and Qingshan should hurry up. Next year you'll be able to hold a chubby baby." My face flushed with embarrassment. Lu Qingshan looked down at me and said to the Marquis Manner's lady, "Aunt, Ah Hai is only 60. Her body hasn't fully developed yet. We'll consider this matter in a few years." I was slightly shocked. Lu Qingshan was actually different from others. Fang Zishu suddenly laughed, her clear voice filling the entire room. "Sister, you're not hiding the fact that you can't bear children, are you?" The Marquis Manner's lady's expression tightened as she asked me, "What is going on with you?" I moved my lips, wanting to mention what happened the year my first period came, when I went into the pond to retrieve a bracelet. But in front of a room full of people, I couldn't utter a single word. If a woman cannot bear children, that is her original sin. A helpless sense of lingering death cut into my heart. Ah Hui told me long ago that she is weak and unlikely to conceive. Lu Qingshan's gaze fell on Fang Zishu like a blade as he covered for me. "If we don't have children in the future, I'll just take care of her alone, and that'll be nice and easy." My eyes welled up with tears and I suddenly wanted to leave. Just then Chu Zhan returned. He was even carrying an unconscious woman in his arms, his sweetheart, no less, white robes flowing gracefully, pure features. You couldn't tell at all that she was already a married woman. Madame Chu flew into a rage. "Chu Zhan, what kind of behavior is this? Mother Linger is ill, and her husband's family doesn't care whether she lives or dies. She has nowhere to go." Chu Zhan knelt on the ground, speaking with sincere words. "Your son wishes to let her stay at the Marquis Manor." Fang Zishu stood in the crowd, watching this scene with tears in her eyes. She suddenly clutched her stomach, her face twisted in pain and collapsed to the ground. Her dress was already stained with blood. She had a miscarriage. The Marquis Manor was thrown into chaos. The Marchioness pulled me aside with a troubled expression. "Ah oui, you're her older sister. If you go in and stay with her, she'll feel better." I nodded. This child had been agitated several times, and today she was provoked again. As expected, she couldn't keep it. When Xu Zhan learned this news, his face was expressionless. He even said coldly, "This child was only conceived because she imitated Linger's appearance and seduced me by drugging me." Only then did I recall that for a period of time, Fang Zishu always wore a white jade hairpin with plain clothes, and when she smiled, she looked as pure as a fairy descended from heaven. She thought she had the ability to steal Xu Zhan's heart, but that was only Lin Linger's shadow. When Fang Zishu woke up, Xu Zhan was still keeping watch at Lin Linger's bedside, not sparing her a single glance. She could only vent her fury over losing the child on me, hurling a rabbit jade carving at me. "What the hell are you doing here? Wasn't harming my mother enough. You have to come bring me bad luck too." I looked at her with pity and said softly, "I told you long ago that killing someone requires paying with your life. You just wouldn't listen. Now this is retribution. Do you think it was mere chance that Lin Linger collapsed from a sudden heart condition on her wedding night?" Fang Zishu immediately calmed down. "Why?" I curled my lips. "Her husband is the only son of the Court of Judicial Review Minister. You caused her husband's death. She must hate you to death in her heart. That wedding night, I had someone deliver her the news that you caused her husband's death." Last interruption. Note Fang Hui's third move. She didn't directly kill Fang Zishu, but rather let Fang Zishu be tormented by Lin Linger at the Marquis Manor until she went mad. Core logic, Fang Hui's scheme. Tell Lin Linger Fang Zishu killed your husband. Susan Lin Linger falls ill on the wedding night, Sistu. Zhan stays by Lin Linger's side, ignoring Fang Zishu. Fang Zishu has a miscarriage, completely loses favor. After losing the child, why use Lin Linger as the blade? Because Fang Hui doesn't need to do it herself. She only needs to kill with a borrowed knife. Lin Linger is Xu Zhan's beloved. Her very existence is the greatest torment for Fang Zishu. The art of bloodless revenge, physical level. Fang Zishu loses her child Su, loses her status at the Marquis Manor mental level. Fang Zishu discovers she didn't marry the Marquis Manor's heir, but rather a collector of Lin Linger's shadow's ultimate ending. After going mad, Fang Zishu escapes to the Prime Minister's residence entrance, loudly curses Fang Hui for making her unable to marry the top scholar, and finally freezes to death on the street, predicting the ending. Fang Hui doesn't need to kill Fang Zishu with her own hands. She only needs to let Fang Zishu walk toward destruction through her own choices. Greedy people will be killed by greed. Vain people will be destroyed by vanity. That Miss Lin liked the only son of the Court of Judicial Review's minister, and the two were husband and wife for several years, deeply in love. So these past few years, Xu Zhan would rather go to remote places to serve as county magistrate than return to Luoyang and watch the two of them living in harmony. Grievances have their source, debts have their creditor. In the Marquis Manor, to deal with Fang Zishu, one Lin Linger is enough to make her suffer. Fang Zishu suddenly realized, her whole body trembling as she said, "You vicious woman, you deliberately harmed me, made me marry Xu Zhan and jump into this pit of fire." I calmly asked back, "Isn't this the happiness and freedom you spoke of pursuing?" At that moment, Fang Zishu's face was pale as snow, her eyes showing some confusion and helplessness. Perhaps her whole life had gone smoothly. As the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's residence, loved by her parents, she already had happiness and freedom above all others, but she just didn't cherish her blessings. Lu Qingshan and I returned to the mansion. Under the boundless moonlight, I held Lu Qingshan's hand, and with the rumbling carriage we returned to that humble little courtyard in the alley. Such quiet days, we lived them for many years. In the blink of an eye, over 10 years had passed. When I became a first-ranked lady of imperial mandate, I was already a mother of 2 children, a 7-year-old young master and a 3-year-old little girl. As my carriage passed through the street, passers-by only knew of my noble status and made way one after another. No one knew that I too was once a concubine born daughter bullied by others. And my husband, who rose to Prime Minister, also came from humble origins in plain white robes. Over the past 10 years, Lu Qingshan and I supported each other step by step to reach where we are today. The hatred buried in my heart died along with the deaths of those who bullied my mother, just like my mother's white bones. The Duke's manor daughter who stole my mother's husband back then, shortly after being divorced, she lay on her sick and died in depression, still muttering pleas for the princess to spare her child before her death. In the 3rd year after my marriage, my father died in the 40 dispute. Lu Qingshan held me then, fearing I'd be sad, but I shook my head. I'm a child who only has a mother. Father never appeared in my life, and there was my sister who was so glorious in her youth 5 years ago. She went mad in the Marquis Manor. When she finally managed to escape, she cursed loudly at my Prime Minister's manor. If not for you, this divinity, I would have married the top scholar long ago. I don't know which year she was living in. I only know that when she was tired of cursing, she collapsed in front of the Prime Minister's residence, and by the time people discovered her, her body was already ice-cold without a trace of warmth. I often miss my mother. My embroidery has long been exquisite beyond measure, but I still love to embroider things. The children have never seen their grandmother and always ask me what she was like. So many years have passed. My memories of mother are few and far between. Only fragmentary shadows remain in my mind. I remember she would take her embroidery to town to sell, would give what little rice was left in the rice jar to the widow next door, and would beg all the way while taking me to Luoyang to search for father. Once, I was truly starving and reached out to steal a meat bun. Mother held my hand down and gave me all the remaining cornbread. Ah hui, no matter how bitter or hard life gets, we must never steal, rob, or take advantage of others. I hold the 2 children in my arms, trying hard to piece together mother's appearance. And I say your grandmother, she was kind and hardworking all her life, never complaining about heaven or resenting others. She told your mother that there is no road in this world that is truly too hard or too bitter. Whether wealthy or poor, it is all temporary. Never use your position to oppress others. All right, all you rational thinkers, the complete script ends here. Let me summarize the core game theory logic of this story in one sentence. When you're oppressed by the entire world, you either die or you become someone smarter than the oppressors, not through violence, but by letting them destroy themselves in their own greed.